Hi everyone, I'm going to teach you how to get started with a Repousse project. We're going to be doing some copper tooling foil. We've got our copper here and a project that's about halfway or 3/4 of the way finished. So I'm going to set this aside, and what I need to do to begin is I need to have a sheet of paper that's exactly the same size as my tooling foil that I'm going to be working with. So you see that it's cut the same size. Okay? On this paper, I'm going to come up with the design that I want to use, and for purposes of this assignment, I've decided to draw a capital letter A, and my first name being Anastasia, starting with the letter A. I have done an illuminated capital, and it's taking up the entire surface, filling both positive and negative space. It's balanced, and it's a decent composition. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn over my paper, take my pencil, look on top of a notebook here, and I'm going to apply graphite all on the back of this paper. This makes transferring the image much easier onto your tooling foil. Alright, so now for purposes of time, I really would have liked to seen that gone a lot darker, but again, for purposes of time, I don't have the time to do that right now, but you would want this to be really, really, really dark. Okay, really dark. Alright, I'm going to take my tooling foil and my illuminated capital, my design. I'm going to take a piece of tape. Now I'm going to tape this design right onto my tooling foil. Keeping it centered as best I can. Now I'm going to work on a surface. I actually have just a notebook, and so I'm going to take my notebook and work right on top of this. You don't want to work on top of a hard surface because the hard surface has no give to it. It's not going to allow your pens or your instruments, your tooling instruments, to really go into the copper. So my next step at this point is to trace over all of these lines. And I really, really recommend you use a color that is different from the pencil. So use a red ballpoint pen. You can see I have a blue ballpoint pen, and we're pressing fairly hard. And we're going to be tracing this entire design onto the copper. My blue pen ran out, so I had to get a different pen. All right, I think I am finished at this point. And so now we're going to turn it over and peel off this tape. Sometimes if you're careful, it will just kind of tear right along there. There we go. Don't ruin your drawing. Keep your drawing because you will want to reference it if there's any confusion as to what is really on the copper. But you can see now that the design has been transferred onto the tooling foil. I'm just going to kind of bend this a little bit back into shape so that we can begin tooling it, okay? So I typically use tools like this. Sometimes people will use a pencil as well, but typically this nice point will work for you. And you're going to begin by working in from the top, pressing out all of those lines that you just created. Okay. So you want to go over those lines and start working them. Your next step, and I'm going to kind of go on, and I will continue working this off camera. But once you have everything traced, you would then begin to start turning over and working from the other side, pressing out. And really starting to stretch this clay, excuse me, stretch the copper. And you would come back on the other side, and it's a matter of going back and forth, front and back, so you start to build up the texture. Do you see how it's becoming almost three-dimensional? So I would be going back and forth, front and back. Working this to ensure that it becomes quite pronounced and raised.